Hey, it's Coach Reeves. Today we're here to talk about conic sections. Not a very hard concept. All we want you to do is be able to identify what type of conic section it is and also be able to write it in standard form by completing the square. Once you recognize what type of conic section it is, you'll know what the end equation should look like. Okay? All right, first thing. When we're going to determine conic sections, we're going to ask you to move everything to one side. Move everything to one side, make it equal to 0. Once you get it to 0, here's the rules how to determine. If there's only one squared term, then you're going to deal with the parabola. And you have to be careful. Normally when we complete the square, it puts it in vertex form. So if we ask you to put it in standard form, you're going to have to change that from vertex to standard form. If there is two positive squared terms and they have the same a value, meaning the coefficient in front of the x squared and the coefficient in front of the y squared is the exact same number and they're both positive, you will have a circle. If you have an ellipse, if you have two squared positive terms with different a values, you can have just x squared and then maybe 4y squared. But you have a different number in front when you have that situation. Then you're going to complete the square, put it in standard form. But once you get everything by itself, get 0 by itself, if you have a different number in front of your x squared and a different number in front of your y squared, it's an ellipse. You're going to have a hyperbola if you have two square terms and one of them is positive and one of them is negative. Because you know this, on a hyperbola, you have a subtraction sign on your fractions. Okay? Alright, so first example, we're going to look at this problem. We're going to move everything to one side and get a 0. The easiest thing to move is just to move the y squared. So we move the y squared by subtracting, and we're going to get 0 equals, I'm going to try to line them up if I can, but if you look at this, you're going to have a negative y squared plus 16x plus 4x squared plus 31 plus 2y. We need to focus on x squared, y squared. So when you have everything on one side of the equation, I have a positive 4x squared and I have a negative y squared. According to the rules, two square terms, one's positive, one's negative. This would be a hyperbola. Now, once you identify it, then you have a very good idea of what your final answer should look like in standard form. So we would complete the square. I would ask you to do it, I would go 4x squared plus 16x plus blank. I would say negative y squared plus 2y plus blank. I would move the 31 to the other side and that would equal negative 31 plus blank plus blank. I would factor away the 4, x squared plus 4x plus blank. Factor away the negative. Get y squared minus 2y plus blank equals negative 31 plus blank plus blank. Now you finish it out. Bring the 4. Take half of 4. Half of 4 is 2. You square the 2 and get 4. 4 times 4 is 16 when you bounce. You have a minus sign, and then you're going to get y. Half of this is going to be y minus 2 is a negative 1. You're going to square this. 1 squared is 1. That's going to give you a negative 1. Okay? Equals 31, negative 31, and a negative 1 is a negative 32. plus 16 is a negative 16. Don't panic. If this happens, do not panic. You're going to divide everybody by negative 16. This would reduce. When we reduce, this is going to give me, I'm going to write it over here, x plus 2. You have a negative, so I'm going to push the negative to the top. The 4 reduces 4 over 16 reduces to a 4. It's a hyperbola, but when I get this, when I reduce this, I'm going to get a negative sign which can be in the middle or in the front, okay? I'm going to reduce a negative divided by a negative makes this a positive. Nothing reduces, so to keep the 16, negative 16 divided by negative 16 is a 1. Do you notice how I transitioned that and I rearranged it so that the negative was second on a subtraction problem? Okay? And this would be your standard form. Don't panic if you did this and we did the math on the right hand side and you ended up with a negative number. You can still divide by a negative. It just means you might have to rearrange your fractions so the minus sign or the negative fraction is second. Okay? Another problem. Let's look at number 3. We're going to move everything to one side. We can move everything to this side. I would add y squared. I would add the x. The order doesn't matter when you determine the conic section. You still have a positive 14y, or just a positive 14, excuse me, and a positive 8y. So we changed the sign. We made this a positive y squared. We made this a positive x. We have 14. We have positive 8y. Now, I want you to focus. I only have one squared term. If you only have one squared term, then you're going to have a parabola. And if we have a parabola, when you complete the square, you're going to be in vertex form, not truly standard form. And you can have to convert that to standard form. Okay? Now, I'm not going to complete the square for every single one of these because we've done these throughout this unit when we dealt with conics. You can do this yourself. I would try to isolate the x and then move everything else. Get the x by itself. All right, next problem. Number 5. I would get everything on the same side. I would move this. I would have x squared minus 17. If I move the 4x, it becomes a negative 4x. If I move the y squared, it becomes a positive y squared. This would equal 0. Focus on the square terms. I have x squared and I have y squared. They are both positive and they both have the same coefficient in front of them. They both have an invisible 1 sitting in front. This would be a circle. Okay? Let's go to another problem. What if I give you something a little more complicated, a little trickier? I would ask you to do a little bit of math first. I would ask you to distribute. That would give me a negative 3x squared. This would give me a positive 12y plus y squared equals, distribute, you get 2y. Distribute, you get negative 2y squared minus 16. Do your distributive property, but you still need to move everything to the same side of the equation. So I would drop in and I would say minus 2y minus 2y. I would say plus 2y squared plus 2y squared plus 16. Nothing to combine it with, so I would say plus 16. So all these cancel. Now I'm looking at a negative 3x squared. 12 minus 2 is 10y. 1y squared plus 2y squared is a positive 3y squared plus 16 equals 0. Once again, focus on the squared variables. I have a positive 3x squared. A negative 3x squared. I have a positive 3y squared. One is positive, one is negative. This would be a hyperbola. So this is all you're doing, is you're trying to get everything on one side of the equation to where you have a 0, and then you start following your rules to determine what section it is. Once you determine what conic section it is, complete the square, work towards standard form. All right, shouldn't be too hard. Good luck.